So thinking through, um, kind of just entering this, there has been an associated with mostly John Piper, although Dr. Schreiner in his book on
Mhm.
faith alone mentions it. The idea of final justification.
Mhm.
Um, some I do you know about kind of the controversy, kind of what is going on, and can explain a little bit about that and
Mhm.
how this kind of fits within this definition of justification?
Well, yeah, and in some respects, this is a complicated issue. Um, there's a tendency among New Perspective and Federal Vision and uh, Daniel Fuller, who is uh, associated in some respects with John Piper, although um, Piper actually uh, instigated or caused a division between himself and his mentor, Daniel Fuller, with his book Counted Righteous in Christ, which turned out to be a much more orthodox treatment of justification than a lot of people were expecting, I think. I'm not saying that I'm completely comfortable with some things Piper has said. He shouldn't be, uh, he shouldn't be just completely associated with Fuller either in some of Fuller's problems. But so, yeah, the whole issue of final justification. I mean, it's really clear from the scriptures, from Romans, that our justification, there is a there is a doctrine of justification that is complete, and that people are fully justified at the point in which they first believe in Christ. Okay, and the tenses in which justification is used in the book of Romans, particularly, make that really clear. And so taking that understanding and that meaning of justification and putting it out there at the final judgment creates all sorts of problems because it's really confusing at best, and it could be heterodox at worst. Okay. Now, having said that, it's indisputable that the term justification is used uh, in a certain way of the final judgment. It is that James is in a different way in James chapter 2. I think what's important to understand is that we're talking about justification in a different sense when it's used of the final judgment. It's not, and we have to kind of keep insulated and separate what we mean by our past justification by faith and what the Bible refers to as a justification. You know, like as in text, by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. And so, and also what James is talking about, they're using justification of something else and something different than we mean when we talk about the Protestant doctrine of justification by faith alone. And I think it's important we have to acknowledge that the Bible uses the term justified to refer to that, but I think it's also important to acknowledge that it means something different than what Paul means by justification and what Paul is referring to in the classic passages in Galatians. There is a demonstration of justification in our works, James chapter 2. There is a vindication. The believer is not justified by his works; he is justified by faith alone. Mm-hmm. But there's a justification of his faith by his works at the final judgment. But that's different, and I think that distinction sometimes gets lost. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I've been noticing from following the debate. I think is what you're saying is that I think they ascribe to Piper probably, our understanding of justification. I don't know if Piper is like, I just don't like the terminology. I wish Piper would have thought of something different.
You don't like the term what?
The final justification terminology. I think that's just a bad term to put there.
Yeah,
I have noticed
it's confusing. If it tends to let what we mean by past and our past and present justification bleed over into the final judgment. Now, I mean, we can't deny there's some relationship, but I think we have to be really careful how we talk about it.
So hopefully that's helpful. I know that's been, at least in the blogosphere and stuff like that, something that's come up. And now
one of the things that is a common characteristic of Federal Vision, Dan Fuller, and New Perspective is they all deny the contrast between a covenant of works and covenant of grace. And I think that contrast between a covenant of works and covenant of grace is absolutely foundational to the Protestant doctrine of justification. At least a dichotomy between law and gospel, law and grace is crucial. And if you don't have that dichotomy in your theology, you're heading in a way wrong direction. Now, the problem is New Perspective, Dan Fuller, and Federal Vision all deny that dichotomy. In fact, that's what Fuller is saying in his book, Gospel and Law, Contrast or Continuum. And he also says it pretty clearly in Unity of the Bible. I think the thing that worries me about Piper is he doesn't have a clear view of the covenant of works either, but he does seem to have in his Counted Righteous in Christ some sort of dichotomy between law and gospel, that which is why Fuller got so angry at him when he wrote Counted Righteous in Christ, but it's still not as clear as I would like it to be. And I think it's a need.